Seek Outside is an American company producing lightweight, versatile tents and titanium stoves. The Big Woods Bucks team and their friends have hunted the Adirondacks with Seek Outside hot tents and have found that it is the best way to get back into the wilderness areas and have a remote hunt. With few roads and hiking trails is the only way to access the extensive backcountry of the Adirondacks, your pack needs to be as light as possible. Seek Outside's lightweight tents and stoves enable you to get back into the most remote country and hunt mature Adirondack bucks that likely have never seen a human being. Use code BWB at checkout on SeekOutside.com and get 10% off your Seek Outside gear. Good luck on your remote hunt in the Big Woods.
Welcome to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast, a Big Woods Bucks production. In this podcast, the Big Woods Bucks crew from New York sits down and discusses all things hunting, and even a little fishing, within the blue line. 6 million acres of old-growth forest and few roads make the Adirondacks one of the most challenging places in the country to hunt. From Iroquois and Algonquin deer drives to the early days of Adirondack guiding to tracking with a GoPro, the team discusses the history, legends, and lore of these ancient mountains. Along the way, the team interviews top Adirondack hunters. From well-known legends to little-known local legends, homing in on what it takes to be successful in these unforgiving woods. All right, welcome to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast, a Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Brian Connor.
And I'm the co-host, Mark Scheeren.
And I'm Austin Scheeren.
Yeah, so we're going to do this little preface here before our first episode because we kind of just rolled right into it without even introducing ourselves or introducing the podcast. So, but
I think we were a little too excited.
Yeah, we were a little excited. We still are. So at this point of us recording this, we've now recorded 12 episodes of the Adirondack Hunt Podcast, which was our, by the way, Adirondack Hunt Podcast. Don't say that too fast. That's the name we came up with anyway, and we all liked it. And I said we kind of have a Michael Hunt problem, and everyone's like, "Hey, we definitely do, but just go with it."
I mean, we're New Yorkers,
so the Adirondack Hunt Podcast. Don't say it too fast.
That's our,
say it like a Mainer.
So, right.
That's our new tagline. Don't say it too fast.
Yeah, don't say that too fast. That's not bad. So we recorded the first 5 episodes. I hope you'll bear with us. We were brand new to well, you'd done one, but anyway, I was DJing, and it just doesn't sound that good quality-wise. But the conversations we had, I think, were really good, and we want you guys to hear those. So we're going to publish those first 5 regardless of the sound quality. So we hope you just cut us some slack and
hang in there.
Hang in there, because I think they are really good conversations.
Yeah, we're having conversations that are different. They're but we're sort of exposing the inside line to the Adirondack Hunt experience, which is really cool.
Yeah,
really
if you don't
cool.
know the Adirondacks, it's very quiet, closed doors. Like, people are very private about their hunting, and to pull some of these people out of the woods and get them to actually sit down and talk about their experiences, it's stuff that, like, you wouldn't believe. You know what I mean? How they grew up and how they learned and met different people, and it's really, really, like, good stuff to hear.
So let's give, like, the 30-second intro of how we started hunting the Adirondacks. For me, I had a camp in the Adirondacks. I've been a lifelong woodsman, but mostly backpacking and fishing. I started hunting in 2018. I never wanted to hunt anywhere but the Adirondacks at my camp, so I immediately got into big woods hunting as my introduction to hunting, period, and I killed my first buck in 2018. I've been getting after him ever since. So that's my little backstory for those of you who aren't familiar with the team and stuff. So Mark,
Yeah, so I had a camping trip on Faro Mountain when I was 13 years old, and I never slept better, never ate better, never felt better in my youth than that 2 days that I had with my brothers out in a tarp in the middle of the Faro Lake.
And you grew up in farm country in
New
York?
Yep, just south of the Adirondacks, about 20 miles south. And I had just never been there. So that planted the seed that I knew someday, and I was just completely taken by the aesthetics of big woods, of the, climax forest, and the animals there. There was something extremely spiritual that touched my heart, and so I always wanted to go back. Hunted with Hal Blood in 2006 to get the short sort of course on tracking, and then just made it my mission to get good at Adirondack hunting. And I've been successful there, which has been a lot of fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
I just want to say, pardon my attire. I just came from work, so I'm a little, haggard. But yeah. So I grew up obviously with him as my father. So I grew up in the woods and spent a lot of time in like southern zone woods outside the park, but a lot of hiking because he would always take his guests at work on outbounds and spent a lot of time in the Adirondacks doing that. So as I grew up and learned how to hunt and just be in the woods and shooting and all that, and then I remember being 14 when I could legally hunt, deer. I went up north with him, and he tortured me every single day.
I did.
To a terrible extent, but I just couldn't not go back. And
he always said yes, even though as a father, I didn't realize to probably slow down and make it a better experience, but he just stuck with it, and I think it's made him a much better hunter in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely good in the long run. It wasn't like torture, right? Like he wasn't yelling at me, like, being demeaning. He would just go, and I didn't have a choice but to follow him. And, by the end of the day, I'm shot, and, like the next day or next weekend or whatever, he'd be like, hey, you want to go up? And I'd be like, yeah, let's go.
There's a thin line between training your son to be a woodsman and having CPS called. I think you navigated it well.
Or breaking him and making him hate it. It was pretty close to that, I think, at points.
Yeah, I think it helped as I got older and I could do my own thing, But I never there was times where I didn't hunt as much or something, but I could never not go back. Like I always wanted to go back. Like there was points where he's like, "Do you even really like doing it?" And I'm like, yeah, I do. It's just, and
it's hard.
And then as I got older and priorities shifted and I figured out what I really wanted to be doing, I spent all my time in the fall in the woods, but yeah, so.
Cool. Well, let folks get right to it. So this first episode is me, Mark, Austin, and our friend Wes LaBar and team member Wes LaBar from the Adirondacks. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you tune into every episode this season. There's going to be 12 of them, all different kinds of great guests. Enjoy.
All right. See ya.
Hey, guys. This is Wes LaBar with Big Woods Bucks. We are here with Austin, Scheeren, Mark, and Brian. We are in Minerva, New York at Morningside Camps and Cottages, where I grew up here in Minerva. So, beautiful day out. We got the lake in the background, and we're recording our first Adirondack Hunt podcast.
That's right.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is.
Pretty awesome.
It's finally getting
really
to it.
Made it happen.
We've been really busy. You guys have been really busy this year at shows and getting different other stuff out. So we're excited to get this Adirondack Hunt podcast going.
Yeah, this is it. This is the Adirondack Hunt Podcast. We kind of discussed for a while what the name would be. We were going to make it like the Big Woods Bucks Adirondacks Podcast, but I think the Adirondack Hunt Podcast is like more. It distinguishes ourselves a little bit from what our friends in Maine are doing.
I think so. I think that I think the Adirondacks are underrepresented, right?
I'd say so. Yeah.
And it's such an amazing place. I'm just staring out at the lake. I don't know if people can see it with the camera.
I don't think they can, but
maybe
we'll
pan.
We'll have to pan out there.
We'll show some pics.
It's pretty incredible. I didn't expect to be here, so this is gonna be fun.
Where'd you expect to be?
I don't know. A cabin, dark.
We were thinking about doing it in my basement. We're depressing.
And I were looking at the dark cabin.
You guys have the view.
Yeah. But I think originally we were going to have it in your basement.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been charming or homey. It's just depressing. Yeah. I have 5,000 VHS tapes in my basement, and then like a bunch of.
It's quite the collection down there.
And stuff.
It is.
Yeah. We're already sidetracked, but yeah, hit me up if you're interested in buying bulk quantity VHS tapes. Yeah. I figured we'd for the first episode just to orientate our viewers, our listeners, and also just a quick apology if the sound is coming out a little funky. This is our first time. Mark's been doing a podcast for a little while now, but I kind of scrambled together all this gear, so hopefully we're going to keep improving as the episodes go on. But for today, my hope was that we could orientate our listeners to the Adirondacks a little bit, talk about what the Adirondacks are, and then also talk about one of the questions we get all the time on Facebook is like, how do I start hunting the Adirondacks? Because it's so different from Maine. in terms of like access. And it's almost a little bit tired to have comparisons between Maine and the Adirondacks. Like, it's just kind of like, I don't know. Every time I go to Maine, I feel like all I do is talk about like, oh, it's different here where I come from. And it's just like, yeah, okay. You know, I feel like I'm just like retreading the same ground over and over again.
How do you age a track?
Yeah.
That's the two most common questions.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to have some tips on that too, just about like finding spots. And then I was hoping too, we could just go into like our own methods for finding spots, how we found spots over the years.
Absolutely.
Like I started hunting period about 5 years ago, and I started in the big woods, and I just started learning from scratch, just walking into the woods. And like I'd read a couple books on hunting, but that was about it. I just started walking. And frankly, that's still my advice. For anybody, I tell everybody, just go find a hiking trail and like go in.
Right. When people ask me, how do you hunt the Adirondacks? It's a little bit different from Maine. There's not really any driving around finding a track. If you do happen to see a track crossing the road, you get pretty lucky there, but I've never tracked a buck that way. The Adirondacks, the one thing it's got going for itself is that there's an immense amount of different trail systems that go throughout the Adirondacks.
That's a good point.
And if you're looking to, when people ask me, what do you do? Find a trailhead, obviously educate yourself on Onyx to look for points of interest on where you think bucks would be. Find a trailhead, start hiking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can pick almost any trailhead around here, hike a couple miles in, and you're going to start seeing some sort of sign. You might not walk into like the most amazing spot ever, but you'll start to see sign, and you have to start out walking. The Adirondacks is just different that way. You can't really drive around and find what you're looking for. So.
And by the way, not just hiking trails too, but as you'll learn as you kind of identify these places to go in, but there's snowmobile trails, there's like places that are marked on DEC's maps as like cross-country ski trails. Any of those trails, they're not in use in the fall.
Right.
And you could use those to get far back in and then start hunting and stuff.
Right. Legally allowed to walk on those trails at any time.
Yep.
A lot of times I see guys, they park at old campgrounds that are open during the summertime but closed in the wintertime. Those are good access points.
Yep.
And it's all state land here, so you can literally just pull over on the side of the road and start walking.
As long as you have Onyx, what people don't realize is the park isn't all one thing. It's not like, they always talk about in the blue line, right?
The blue line.
So that's the outer border of it. But the reality is there's a lot of private-owned land in the park.
Right.
And so Onyx makes it nice because you can find a section where there's 100 feet of access.
Yes.
And then, public land on both sides. And then you just park on that 100 feet and get in there and you're legal. So
right.
A lot of times those are those neat little piccadillys that you have with Onyx that years ago on a map you may not be able to see because it's expanded out too far. Mm-hmm. You also can make a mistake where you're 100 feet the wrong way and have a ranger come up and flip out on you. Not that I've ever had that happen. Chuckle, chortle. So you have to be precise when you're doing those things, but yeah.
So I think a good segue then to talk about what the Adirondacks are, because I don't think it's necessarily too widely known what we mean when we talk about the Adirondacks. So there's the Adirondack Mountains, which is a mountain range. Then there's Adirondack Park, which is a legal forest preserve sort of entity, state park. And then, as Mark mentioned, there's different land classifications within the Adirondack Park. About 3.5 million acres are public land. Within public land, it's broken down by wilderness area, wild forest area, forest. Yeah, so there's all different classifications. Most public land, though, without exception, you can hunt.
That's right. So you don't have to worry.
Exactly. And then there's 2.5 million acres of private, and most of that private is logging company land, which actually varies in terms of whether or not you can hunt it. So you have to check whether or not it's a conservation easement.
Right.
A lot of the logging company land has exclusive leases by hunting clubs, but quite a bit has conservation easements where you can go on and you could treat it basically just like public land. That land, because it's logged, obviously tends to be look a little bit more like Maine and frankly have more deer and have more roads and access and stuff. So your options are huge. So what the Adirondacks are, so I don't know how too much into history we want to go basically, but I don't know, fun fact, I read a lot about Native Americans and stuff and the colonial era and stuff. I thought this was interesting. And I've read this in several different texts from that period, from that time period, like the late 18th century, like mid to late 18th century, but talking about how the Iroquois and the Mohawk hunted.
Yeah.
With respect to, and I said this at the presentation at the Sportsman Show, but with respect to Larry Benoit, he talks about in his book about how he has Iroquois blood, and that's kind of how he learned how to track. And I'm sure there were Iroquois who did track, but the predominant method was actually drives.
Right.
It was drives. And if you think about that, that makes perfect sense. I mean, we track because that enables you to get on a buck, and in particular a big buck. But if you're just looking to feed like
A
your
society,
whole family and
right,
your longhouse,
right,
it
right.
doesn't matter whether or not you
No.
kill a
Drives
buck or
are
not.
by far the most effective thing in the Adirondacks.
They are.
And they
They
still
are.
go
They
on
are.
today. And a lot of people don't like drives, and they kind of have a bad rap. I mean, particularly among, I think, Mainers. I don't want to, cast too broad a generalization, but I think among Mainers, they kind of look down on it because it is illegal. I think in Maine, only 3 people can coordinate.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon in the Adirondacks to have 20-man drives across a whole mountain
Yeah.
range.
But those guys are professional at it, too.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
the guys that really drive the Adirondacks are as good at it as Hal Blood is tracking deer.
That's right. I think the term drive, and this is a great conversation to have, actually.
It is.
I think drive implies a wall of Minutemen with their muskets driving through the woods, right?
Right.
And all the animals are scurrying and it's chaos, and then you're blazing away at the standby guys, the standers. And that's not what it is. I mean, if you're going to, it's not to say that hasn't been done.
Right.
Right. But it's highly dangerous and looked down upon, even by the driving protocol. It's a slow, still hunt with people. And you hope that you move the deer into an area that they already go to,
Right.
and then you have the guys sitting and waiting, and there's enough distance and cover, and you know where the people are. You're well educated from generations of this,
Right.
and it is the most effective way, because that kind of thing works, especially in Forever Wild, where the landscape doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
So from year to year, you know where the escape routes are. You know where that ridge is, that cliff that the deer come down and have to go by.
Yes.
So that
the
stuff really
signpost
is.
rubs, the scrape lines, it all change. It all stays the same. It
That's
doesn't
right.
change.
That's right.
And by the way, and I know none of us are too into drives.
I've
I
done
like
a lot of it.
Wes has done. You've done quite a few.
It's,
Then
it's
yeah.
not my favorite thing to do, but when the time is right, my friends and I, we get together and do drives, and very strategically. I don't want to get too much into it, but there's a lot of different ways you can do drives, and we use it a lot to learn areas. And then when the snow falls and it's good tracking snow, my friends and I will spread out over a 3 or 4 mile area that we know where there's deers in and go tracking. But when it's loud and crunchy like it was this last year, we did drives and killed 2 really nice bucks just doing a drive because it was loud. Tracking and trying to hunt by yourself was unproductive and just a waste of time. So it's like, hey, let's get together and do a little drive day,
Right.
And had good success. We use it a lot to learn areas, and then we'll go in there and hunt by ourselves and stuff. But when the timing's right, and late season is a really good time to do drives when deer start to yard up and stuff like that. It can be very effective.
Yeah, I like to say when people ask me whether I do drives is no, I like to hunt solo, but ask me again once it's like the second to last week and I haven't seen anything.
Don't get it twisted. I raised my hand and said I'm like the drive guy. I hunt predominantly most of the season by myself. When I have a big group of clients, we do drives because that's most effective. Small group, we'll just do some sits and whatever. But once or twice a year, my friends and I get together and try to do some damage, and it's really fun to be with a group of guys and just hear a bunch of shots go off and stuff like that. It's really fun. But it's not something I do all the time. I don't want people to get that.
And by the way, because I think there are people who think it's unsporting, and I think Mark's point is that it's not. It's really not. And a lot of the same woodsman skills go into drives. I mean, you need to be able to shoot.
A running deer.
Run,
you have to have confidence to shoot a running deer.
You need to know where deer are. It doesn't help you if you're going onto a mountain range where there just aren't that year for whatever reason.
Right.
You have to be able to read sign just like you would still hunting or setting.
And
or
you got to
tracking.
remember how much space there is. Like if you have 10 guys doing a drive, so you have 5 guys sitting and 5 guys pushing, and you're covering an entire mountain. I mean, there's hundreds of yards in between each guy.
Right.
That's why, like, when people have things to say about videos of all of us shooting a deer and we're just ripping shots off. Like they see it as dangerous, which in southern zone and farm country it probably would be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But up in the mountains you have so much space. I mean, how many guys have you just ran into in the Adirondacks?
Yeah,
hunting.
Right. In 20 years, probably 5,
if that.
Yeah,
you know?
and the odds of actually hitting one when you're, tracking is well, statistically, you have a greater chance of getting hit by lightning. So I'm not that worried about that sort of thing. I think it's hard for people who have never done it.
Yeah.
When you get into the big woods, when you get into the Adirondacks, and you suddenly realize, you look on a map. I'll never forget it. My nephews, one time, Austin was young, but Austin was already experienced with the mountains and looking at a topographical map. My nephew said, we're going to go over this mountain, and this mountain. And I said, really? We're going to do that in 2 days? Right? And this was just hiking. But they were 4,000 footers, and it was like 4 mountains. And I said, if we get up over the first one and get back to the car in 2 days, we'll be lucky. And he's like, no. But when you get in there and you realize that this tiny little space on the map, and you got a map that's 2 feet by 2 feet, and you walk that and it damn near killed you, then you realize, oh, this is massive. And your whole mind gets blown. And I think that's also the intimidating part. But the beauty of it is there's room for everybody.
Right.
There's room for everybody.
Right.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this podcast makes the Adirondacks popular again.
And it used to be insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you look back to Moose River Plain days.
Yeah.
I mean, there was cars and campers, tents lining that.
Every hotel was sold out.
That's right.
Every bedroom.
That's
Every
right.
pillow was sold out during deer season up there.
And by the way, I think we've all had this, but it's super common going through the woods to find old hunting camps.
Oh, my gosh.
They're everywhere.
I remember we'll have my cousin on at some point, but he's my third cousin, and his grandfather hunted the Adirondacks back in those days, and he had like a map, and it was where every remote camp was in this whole area. It was like everybody and their uncle just had a remote camp in the Adirondacks. It was crazy, and like now maybe you go to that same area where probably there used to be like 30 guys camped out for a week at a time. You might run into one person, maybe.
Well, this year, Dad and I did a remote camp, and it was 4.5 miles in, and we found 2 camps within a half a mile of our camp, like old camps.
Isn't that funny?
I was like,
yeah.
And you and I found one in there.
Last time somebody was hunting in here.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm actually going to take another video of that because I did a little quick video and it ended up being really popular. But that's the video where the pan is grown into the tree. You can see where somebody finally had their last eggs that they cooked or whatever, and they put the cord or the wire between 2 cast iron pans over the crotch of a tree. Well, now both pans are grown into those trees and the wire's gone, and you can't. I pulled on the pans and I couldn't get them loose, That's probably 50, 60, 70 years ago. And the stove is half filled with dirt. It's rotted right down to half its size. And then we found another camp not far away. Now, what that does for me is if I was to mark all the places where there's camps, which there's another area that me and Bob hunt where there was all these different camps, and I marked it out on when we were first learning the Adirondacks. Ironically, that's where we shot a lot of the bucks. So whenever I find a camp, those people knew what they were doing.
Historical
Those weren't the
data.
amateurs going in 5 miles and carrying a wood stove on their back. Right? That's right. You're not making that investment. A 300-pound cast iron stove, up on top of a mountain. So we actually have places like Stovetop Mountain and stuff that we've named that are just hills that are unnamed, that are these campsites throughout these places. And we've shot bucks all over those places.
Yeah.
So anytime I find those old camps and the fact that we picked that spot, now we had already known that it was a good spot, but it gives me confidence.
Right.
Because I know there's a lot of bucks that have died in those places.
It's basically, if the way I look at it, it's an Onyx waypoint.
Yes.
Just think about over the last 100 years how many big bucks were killed in there. And like you said, they're there for a reason. And so it's like you got to pick up on that stuff. And it's like, man, that's a free waypoint right there.
That's right.
Ka-ching.
So I want to ask you guys all about this too, because I know I've talked to each of you about it, and a lot of folks from the Adirondacks where is the methods that are used in the Adirondacks, and how I think one of the first things you and I discussed when we met is how you have to be able to do it all, which is sit, still hunt, and track.
Right.
And I think that's way more true than Maine. I mean, Maine, you can't see 10 feet in front of you. You really have to track, in my opinion. And sitting would be really difficult. But in old growth forest, where you can see for 150 yards, you could sit on a runway. And again, we'll have my cousin on. He's a sitter, and he learned that old school Adirondack method of sitting. And if you read a lot of the old books about the guides, and in like the 19th century, the heyday of Adirondack guiding, they all had watches. I mean, that's what they called it.
Yeah.
It was like I put a client on my watch, or I went to my watch.
Right.
So it was like a lot of sitting was involved. I mean, do you still sit as part of your guiding service?
I do. Especially guiding, I do a lot more sitting, in the morning, and then I'll move people around because it's hard to have a client come up here and just tell them, hey, you got to sit here all day. They're like, no. And then it's the Adirondacks. I can have a client for 4 days. He might not see a deer 3 out of the 4 days. If you're with me for 4 days, you're going to see a deer. But, I do move them around a little bit just to keep them warm, but we're not built like they used to be. These guys back in the day, they'd sit in the same spot for days until they killed a nice buck. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I definitely have points of interest that, I'll set people up on. And it's cool because, like you said, in old growth forest, you can see 150 yards that way and maybe 100 yards that way, and there's a really good runway on the south and up north, and you put them right in the middle and have great success. And it's good watches, like say you're going to do a drive. A lot of the times I'll put a guy out early in the morning, let him sit till 9 o'clock, and then I'll go sit or start scouting or check trail cameras, and then I'll make a loop, come up over a mountain and try to maybe do like a little bump and dump and, bump some deer to him if they didn't come off the mountain while he was sitting there. So
those of you who listen to the podcast will know that here at Big Woods Bucks, in the off-season, we're big into brookie fishing. If you're going to be brookie fishing in the Adirondacks, there's only one way to do it right, and that's with a lightweight canoe. Our friends at the Adirondack Canoe Company are making traditional lightweight pack canoes. Adirondack Canoe Company's canoes are the finest made canoes in the Adirondacks, the Northeast, or the country for that matter. When I go brookie fishing, I bring the Adirondack Canoe Company's Haystack canoe. The Haystack is based on the John Henry Rushton-designed Wee Lassie, which has proved to be a worthy haul over the last 150 years. Worked into the Adirondack culture of brookie fishing, this canoe is a fantastic fishing platform and light enough to carry wherever you go. So if you're in the market for a lightweight canoe, go to the Adirondack Canoe Company and check out their stuff. We'll see you out on the brookie ponds.
Hi everyone, team member Mark Scheeren here. Some of you might not know that my day job is coaching people on how to move past addictions. I've been doing this for more than 34 years now, and I absolutely love providing the most effective method for moving past addiction in the world. It's called the Solution to Addiction Workshop and the Solution to Addiction Coaching. Both of these life-changing programs are presented by me and my team here at the Freedom Model. If you're someone who wants to be free from an addiction, but you don't want to go to daily support meetings, rehabs, or be on replacement medications for the rest of your life, give us a call at 888-424-2626. Or you can go to www.thefreedommodel.org. Your first 30-minute consultation is free. Here's that number again, 888-424-2626. I look forward to helping you. Take care.
Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specializes in merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves. And our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
Nice.
Well, Austin, we had really what everybody considers. Let me preface this by saying that. So, Austin and I were walking up the mountain the first day we were at camp, and this is the teepee tent deal that we were doing, and we're 4 or 5 miles in the woods. And that morning, we went up to the top of the mountain from camp, which is about a mile up, and we got some signal at the top of the mountain. And I was going to contact my wife because that was the only time I had signal. So we would, and his wife was pregnant and stuff. So I'm looking, and social media did its dump onto my computer or my phone, and all of a sudden, all I see is people saying, oh, conditions suck. Is there tracking snow up in Rangeley? And what about New Hampshire? Is there snow up there? I hate still hunting in the Crunch Fest, and I got depressed looking at it. I'm going, geez, this is pretty horrible. Because meanwhile, as we're walking, as we're going up the mountain, it's sunny, probably 30 degrees. There's a crispy, crunchy, dry sort of frozen dew. It couldn't be worse.
Yeah,
you could hear
for like 20 minutes the night before, and just had like enough to like make like a little bit of ice on top of the frozen leaf. It's terrible.
So it was what is considered, according to social media, as the worst conditions possible. And I thought, I love hunting this. I love it because I can hear the deer, they can hear me, and you can play chess. So anyway, but I'm thinking to myself, when did all of a sudden still hunting and sitting and the different techniques that have happened for thousands of years go out the window?
Like if you're not tracking deer, you can't kill them.
Yeah.
Right.
So Austin, tell your story. So we sort of split up, went around the mountain, 2 different sides. Tell what happened.
Yeah. So as I was walking, it's obviously super crunchy, and I was like, well, I know I can hear them if they're moving. I just got to go a little slower. So I would crunch a little bit and stop, and I'd listen and wait. But I'd use the grunt call and the bleat can, and I'm just trying to do anything I can to get them to come to me. And as I'm doing this, I was just waiting longer than I was moving, and then trying to get them to make the mistake first, because all I need is to hear them. And once I can hear them, then I'm just going to freeze up and wait. So it ended up, I went through, like, over the mountain through this valley and up on top of another little knob, and there was deer tracks everywhere. I found some good sign, but it was like the night before, and I was like, man, I wanted to stay there and hunt, but I was like, they're obviously not here anymore, so I got to go where they're going to be. And so I went back through that same bowl down lower on the mountain, which is a pretty big mountain. I mean, what would you say? It's probably 3 miles.
Oh, yeah, it's big.
One end to the other.
It's big.
I mean, it's a pretty good-sized mountain.
Yeah, that's big.
And so this bowl is pretty big, and it goes all the way from the top down on the one side, and it opens up as it gets to the bottom to the swamp. And I know that deer travel up and down this because I've tracked a couple bucks through there. So I was probably 1/4 mile down the hill from where I had come through on the top, and then was coming back through to check another bowl. And I was almost to the other side, just crunching my way along, and I heard like, and I'm like, oh, what was that?
That's the heart race.
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling it right now. Yeah, I'm putting myself right in his shoes.
It's one of those I could barely hear it, and I was like, did I just hear that?
Yep.
Because now it's like 1:30 in the afternoon.
I'm making that happen.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you want to hear
You
it
do
so
that.
bad, you start making things up, right? So I waited, and I heard it again. I was like, oh, it's definitely a deer.
Oh, that's when you really start.
Yep. And I caught that buck coming up the mountain right towards me feeding, and he never knew I was there. But I was being loud. I literally had just taken a couple steps, hit the grunt call, and the grunt call I had was pretty loud, and he never even knew. You know what I mean? Like, you can get away with a lot in the crunch.
Yeah.
Especially
and that was a nice 9-point buck. I want to make the point that we were just, 3 hours before listening to how everybody's like, this is going to be the worst day ever in hunting, and I'm staying home. And I'm thinking, this is beautiful.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it was, granted, it's sunny. Nobody wants that, but the truth of the matter is why are we thinking that this is somehow bad?
I know.
The deer are in the woods regardless of the weather.
Right.
Right, and the way I look at it is that we should be too. If you have the opportunity and the time to go hunting, why don't you go out there? Yeah. Because hunting season's going to end. You're going to be like, man, I wish I would have hunted, and maybe I would have, came across the buck.
Conditions.
Now,
and develop the best plan of attack that I can.
Right.
And do that all day.
Yeah.
And if I kill a buck by the end of it, then I'm the man.
Right.
But if not, then at least I had a good day hunting and I enjoyed it.
Right.
See, I want to touch on that because it's like you said, like I can't stand that either. And don't get me wrong, it's like you said, it's easy to look at that and kind of get yourself down,
Yes.
but that's not, in my opinion, and this might piss some people off, but that's not who I think hunters are. I think if you're a true hunter, you're going to go out there and try your best in any situation. You know what I mean? I think you have to do that in the Adirondacks because, you know, Maine gets a lot of snow, so it's like you almost have that track and snow all the time. Here, the weather's all over the place, and you just need to adapt to that type of hunting. So sometimes if it's loud, you got to sit. Sometimes if it's still hunting, just hunt like you're scouting, but you're still hunting. You might be making a bunch of noise, but you might stumble across the biggest buck of your life and shoot it, you know?
I want to say something about Maine, though. You definitely can still hunt it, and I know you were talking in generalities. But when I hunted with Hal, we only had snow the first day. And the second day, the snow was melting, and both days we almost shot bucks. Got within seeing them, you know, flashes, and,
Right.
and they're gone. And this was really my first foray into learning big woods hunting. And the irony was, prior to that, I had already shot about 25 bucks, still hunting and not tracking. My whole life I learned I was a woodsman since I was a little boy. And so when the following days, the following 4 days that I hunted with Hal, I realized, oh, this is very similar to what I know. You know, now the difference was Hal has a style that's actually pretty similar to mine, but I just had to expand my mind a bit. He scouts, and so he trucks through the woods, and then when you get into sign, he really slows down, and I mean really slows down, right? And I just didn't understand the spacing, because in the southern zone of New York is a lot like the southern zone of Maine or the southern zone of New Hampshire, that line. And you, if you can just expand your thought, and where we call it a desert, Austin and I call it a desert, where there are no deer, or very few deer, you know, on a farm that might be an acre or two, right? They never are there, you know, but up here it might be a square mile. So you truck through that.
But the thing with Maine, I'll say, is like their landscape's always changing because of the logging.
Right.
So where Hal has to truck through what is a desert at that time to look for sign, like where we all hunt, we all know where the deserts are.
That's
so
right.
it doesn't change in the Adirondacks.
It doesn't.
Rarely.
So the deserts stay the deserts, the good spots generally stay the good spots. It
Right.
might be bad day to day.
Or
But
a
season
season to season with beech nuts being there one year, oaks being there, and then they're not. Then
Right.
you switch to swamps, right? Then you have
Yep.
plan B.
That's where it changes, is based off of our crop. That's where, you know, some places, you know, you go there filled with deer because there's a bunch of acorns, and then other times when there's no acorns, the deer are going to be miles away,
That's right.
you know.
That's right.
Yep. And then like the west, in the central, you don't have the acorns.
No.
You really have beech nuts.
That's right.
Right.
And other than that, so the same travel corridors, and then you have your signpost rubs and your scrape lines, and outside of that, they're going to be somewhere in there.
That's
Right.
right. And then you make your grid work
Yep.
on Onyx. It's great because, you know, we've shot bucks and shot at bucks and killed bucks by one really or two signpost rub lines, you know, and they might be a half a mile apart, but we have these marked in this one area where they're a half mile apart, and there's probably 30 of them, right, total, and they're all over this place. But it's a big area. There's square miles there. But when we don't have a track, we just go from one to the next, because then you narrow down to at least some idea in your mind.
There might be a buck coming this way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's worked. So that grid work with Onyx is awesome.
Mhm.
You know, you can just start connecting dots.
Right. And it just goes back to those days that are less desirable. Go out there and start connecting dots.
Yeah.
You might be so loud you'll never see a deer, but why don't you take advantage of hunting season to carry your rifle and go scout? There's no better time to scout deer than during season, and then you log all that information.
That's right.
That's
Like
when I do all
you
my
shoot a
scouting.
buck. This is why I don't get with people, like they shoot a buck and they're done for the year. Like, yep, got my deer, whatever. I'm just gonna you know, you got a bear tag, you can shoot coyotes, and you can shoot foxes. Just keep hunting. Like,
this is the Adirondacks. We don't stop at $1.
no, right? But seriously, you got to just stay out there. There's no time like the present. If it's season, be out there. You know what I mean? And just educate yourself.
One quick point too, just for people who may not be familiar with the Adirondacks, is, and I haven't proved this up, but I'm pretty certain the northern zone has the longest gun season for whitetail in the United States by a long shot.
Yep.
I mean, you have
six
weeks of rifle and then a week of muzzleloader. We're talking about 7 weeks of guns and then a late muzzleloader in the eastern Adirondacks. So
yeah,
we're
not
talking
far
about
from
a
here.
long season.
And,
I mean,
now a Christmas season, muzzleloader season in the southern zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Where now you have snow in different parts of the southern zone.
Right.
Because you're at the end of December.
Mm-hmm.
And that works out awesome.
Like if you were to hunt all seasons in New York for whitetail, you would literally hunt from October 1st until
September 27th.
Until January.
Bows, yep. Opening early bow is September 27th.
zone, all the way to New Year's.
Yeah,
So
to New Year's.
First weekend, and New Year's, really.
And to dovetail with what Wes was saying about scouting while you're hunting, when you're still hunting, you know, you have we're hunting with guns basically the week after Columbus Day?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like the leaves are still on the trees.
Yeah, they are.
And by the way, if you do early bear, you can be scouting hunting from mid-September.
Yep,
so
mid-September.
you could just spend weeks and weeks and weeks just basically carrying a gun, covering ground, and scouting primarily. And if you happen to see something, you can shoot
By
it.
the last week of rifle, if you don't have a good spot to hunt, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, you don't have enough time to spend
That's
out
true.
there.
Now, there is something to be said, I think, if you have a limited amount of time, saving it up for those last 2 weeks. Because,
Yes.
well, we don't need to get into the migration right now. You'll be hearing plenty about the migration over the episodes. To give you a preview, though, the migration, and I've spoken to Vermont hunters about this and Maine hunters, the migration after several snowstorms is way more pronounced in the Adirondacks than anywhere else in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from multiple hunters from multiple states,
Absolutely.
which is a whole strategy in and of itself. But if you have a limited amount of time, you really might consider just saving it up for the last 2 weeks of the season.
That's
But if
that's
you're
what-
hardcore and like me, you don't have kids, and I have weekends off, and I got a 9 to 5, and I get to just leave at 5 and go up to camp and spend the entire weekend hunting. Like, I'm there. I don't care. I'm crunching around. Like,
right,
there's nowhere else I'd rather be.
right, educating yourself.
So I just want to tell the audience too that we're going to have rotational hosts and co-hosts and things like that as we figure all this podcast out. But our whole mission is to educate people on the Adirondacks, but also just in general on hunting and woodsman skills and what we've learned. We're obviously not the greatest hunters in the world. We don't claim to be what
I'm terrible. I mean, I've shot one buck in 6 years hunting. No, I'm a good hunter. I'm just unlucky.
He's shot
Sorry,
more than
Mark,
that
go ahead.
in different places. I think that we just want you to know that we're here to educate, and we do that hopefully through entertaining stories. And we care about hunting. We care about the heritage. And we want you to try. So many people get lost in the tracking world with big woods bucks. They think that's all we do. And trust me, I've still hunted with Hal, and he's a crazy good still hunter, right? Like ridiculously good. Rodney Elmer, phenomenal. Probably one of the best still hunters I've ever heard, and a master educator. Really fun to listen to and learn from. I hope that we develop that sort of style. We're obviously winging it right now. This is our first episode, but I want you to know that we're going to work really hard. So send questions to us. We should probably have an email.
We're going to actually go on Facebook in just a minute and have people call in with questions. So
very
we'll have
cool.
that segment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, assuming it works.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess
I don't
we'll
want to
see.
jinx it, but yes. But we want to answer those questions. We want to hear those questions. We want to talk to other Adirondack hunters about what's worked for them. I mean, ultimately, like, it's a really – so Neil's 2 bucks back-to-back years in 3 hours each, notwithstanding, the Adirondacks are challenging to hunt. I mean, they just really are. It's a tough place to hunt. I can tell you there aren't as many deer as Maine.
I think the first one took him 5 hours.
Yeah, I think it was 5 hours. I mean, he's a phenom at tracking. There's no question. I mean, he's just a phenom of a guy at everything, bow hunting. But it's a tough place to hunt, and we want this to be a resource for you. And frankly, I wish I had something like this when I was starting out, because I had to figure out a lot for myself. And So that's our hope, like, as Mark said, to have this really be something, you can listen to that'll improve, your odds and your skills and help you be successful.
Right, absolutely. Especially I'm a prime example of that because I came from a non-hunting family. Like my dad never hunted, my grandfather's never hunted, and I went out there and literally made every single mistake you could possibly make and just logged information about deer hunting until I became consistent at it. And I would have loved to have something like this to listen to. You know what I mean? I had all these misleading magazines that all the Midwest guys and, I'm not going to get into names, but, all these misleading magazines about what deer hunting is and how to deer hunt. And there was nothing about woodsman skills, how to read a map, compass, and all that. So we're hoping by doing this that we can help you guys that maybe come from a non-hunting family to really just up your game. So when you come to the Adirondacks or any of the big woods, you have that level of confidence of yourself to go out there and get it done. You know what I mean?
And there's whatever level that may be.
Right. Whatever level.
If you want to just come up and sit, you can sit.
Right.
If you want to learn how to still hunt, you can be a still hunter or a tracker.
Right.
Or whatever. Or at least know, like you said, navigate with a compass and feel confident to just walk around and hunt for sheds.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of that can be done through Onyx. Shout out to Onyx. We're partners with them. I use that app like you would not believe, and it's good to find areas, at least starting points to your big woods adventures using Onyx.
The other thing is Hal has his compass course right on our channel, our YouTube channel. That's indispensable because Onyx can fail because phones can fail.
Right.
And we hear that all the time. I think I taught Austin, I taught my kids how to use a compass and a map, and they were not allowed to use their phone for years until they could look at a map, orientate the land. And I'll tell you why this is important. I struggle with Onyx sometimes because I learned on a map and a compass. So when I take and I get out of the truck and I orientate a map, right? You take your compass, you orientate the map. And if you watch the course, you don't know anything about that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. What that does is all of a sudden the entire earth is now matching this paper description. My body and my mind become orientated to that. On a phone, if I don't set up Onyx the same way and orientate myself to what I'm seeing on the screen, because it's very easy for your phone, they have different features, different ways to navigate, I get confused.
Right.
So it took me a while to figure out how Onyx worked. I could take a map and I could use a compass like it was my second nature. So if you're one of these older folks like myself that got Onyx later and aren't techie, it might take you a little while to figure out the features in Onyx that allow you to run it like a map like you did with a compass. And you can do that. You can do it that way. But there's also different ways where you start letting that little pointer direct you, and all of a sudden you're like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. The earth is going all over the place, and it disorientates you.
Right.
So it's really interesting of the different methods you learn. But I always say map and compass first when you're young or new. Get used to that, because if all else fails, that works.
Yep.
And I think that that's really important.
Hang on a minute. Oh, it's Kevin.
Kevin
Stone. You are live on the Big Woods Bucks podcast, my friend. What cabin number is this, Wes?
11.
Can you come down to 11?
He's bringing us food.
Tell him to drive down.
Go left.
You know this is raw.
I'm so excited for food.
No, just drive around until you see the bone truck. You'll be fine. All right. Thanks. Peace. All right. That might be a good time to take a quick break for some messages. All right.
Yes. All right.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much. This was the first episode. We did just review a little bit of the audio. It did sound scratchy in parts, so just bear with us. I hope you'll bear with us on some of the tech side as we work that out. But otherwise, we hope you enjoyed this first episode, and we hope to put out 12 episodes this year. Variety of different guests.
We will put out 12 episodes.
Yeah, that's right. So we're gonna have 12 episodes. We're gonna have hopefully 12 interesting guests. We got a good one for you lined up right now. Actually, he's sitting right over there in the corner of the cabin. Kevin Stone, the Kevin Stone from Speculator, New York. We'll say Speculator. All right. So, you guys got anything?
No. Thanks for.
I was excited.
Yeah, we're all excited to bring some light to the Adirondacks, and we're here to help you guys and serve you guys. So, feel free to reach out to us at any time if you have any questions. And yeah, looking forward to helping you guys out.
Austin?
That's it. Just excited. Like he said, it's always good to bring some light to the Adirondacks. So that's pretty cool.
And if anybody has any questions, you can contact any of us through our Instagram accounts, Big Woods Bucks,
Facebook, anything.
And we will have a Gmail account, email address that we're going to create.
Yep. And once I get it set up, I'll publish that on Facebook for you guys to send in questions that we can answer on the podcast.
The other thing is, this is my little commercial for what I do. Big Woods has always supported what I do, and that's I help people with addictions. So if you have any questions, I was the person that created the first non-12-step program for addiction help in the world, and it's called the Freedom Model. And you can go to thefreedommodel.org, or just get a hold of me if you want to private message me. We can have a private conversation.
All right.
Awesome.
All right. We'll see you next time, folks.
Until next time.
See you guys on the next one.
We need a little catchphrase like how we can't steal Hal's and say good luck on the trail. Good luck on your drive.
I don't know. We'll have to figure that out for the next one.
Shoot straight and kill a lot of bucks.
Don't shoot the watcher next to you.
Shoot a lot and kill a lot of bucks.
Yeah.
Very to the point here at Adirondack Hunt Podcast. Kill a lot of bucks. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time, folks.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast. You can find more episodes at bigwoodsbucks.com. Check out bigwoodsbucks.com for the latest gear, including our famous American-made wool hunting jackets, wool hunting fanny packs, and wool hunting pants, along with books, tracking guides, and logo wear. See you next time.